Jack, we have arrived at a ranked matchup for Notre Dame. I know we've had a couple of those this season, but you could say that those were probably expected. Texas A&M, as soon as we saw that they were going to be in the rankings, you knew, okay, we got a week one ranked matchup. Louisville, if they won a few games and they were undefeated when they came to Notre Dame Stadium, as they were, I believe they were undefeated, uh, ranked matchup. Can't say that Louisville has had the same success since Notre Dame that Texas A&M had, but Navy has had success all season long, partly because they have not played a team like Notre Dame. But Jack, this makes this matchup, and I know you're thrilled to be able to go out there to MetLife Stadium this weekend to see it in person. It makes it a big one, and every single game has been big since Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. But now you get a chance to beat a ranked team, beat a team that people are talking about. Like Navy is actually being talked about because of its quarterback and its offensive coordinator and its offense and all these things. But pretty fun one that we have on tap before Notre Dame goes into its second bye week of the season.
Yeah, it's one of the most intriguing matchups of the week. I honestly saw someone on Twitter like speculating that game day could go to East Rutherford, New Jersey, which would be crazy for so many reasons. It wound up going to Indiana because Indiana's 7-0 and looking like a playoff team. But yeah, it's suddenly one of the more intriguing matchups of the week. It's one of Notre Dame's most intriguing matchups of the season, especially because like this isn't your grandfather or your father's or even last year's Navy. Like it's I totally lost my train of thought early in the show. We're off to a great start. You put a stat on the board earlier today, I think in the Hey Horka thread, that like common misconception about Navy team, like everyone's talking about them as like they're going to drain the clock. You're not going to get a ton of possessions. Navy's 85th in time of possession this year. It's a different Navy team. They win with explosive plays. They generate a ton of explosive plays, and it's going to be a fun matchup this week.
Yeah, Army, and we'll talk about them in about a month, exactly a month actually, until that game on November 23rd at Yankee Stadium. That's the bleed the clock. And by the way, that's a good offense too, mind you. But the explosives, I think, is the difference there, Jack. You talk about Navy just they don't care how quickly they score. Like the wide receivers obviously aren't involved a whole lot. It's their tight ends and their fullbacks who are catching passes, but they do have a wide receiver on the team who has caught like a 35 or 50-yard touchdown somewhere in there. That happens with this Navy team as opposed to Navy teams of old. You mentioned that this is one of the more intriguing matchups college football wide this week, and that is the case because Notre Dame took care of business in Atlanta, where I was at this past weekend. So I guess before we get into an ad read and the questions that we have for tonight, we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll pose this to you. I don't have this on the agenda, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. You feel better about Notre Dame having watched that Georgia Tech game? Worse? The same? How'd you leave that thing?
Probably about the same. I wasn't entirely surprised by what happened. I got the score differential right. I was just 7 points off. I had 38-20. The score was 31-13. So not unexpected. I think I was really impressed with the run defense. I'm very encouraged by what I saw from the run defense against a good run game in Georgia Tech. Other than that, I mean, the offense is still inconsistent, but still flashes some really good levels of play. The pass defense remains awesome. Watching the defense film this week, it was like Georgia Tech did a lot of gimmicky stuff early in the game. Like they tried to stretch the field horizontally. They basically tried to, like, we have great playmakers, Georgia Tech said, so we're going to try to isolate them on the outside, use some misdirection to get some favorable angles. Worked early. Notre Dame clamped down on it around the second quarter. So I feel about the same. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, a couple things there. You mentioned your score prediction. I almost nailed it exactly. I said 30-13, and it
Oh,
was
wow.
31-13. Yeah, obviously it would have been impossible because Notre Dame didn't miss an extra point. So if anything, it would have been 33-13, or maybe they score a touchdown where they attempted one of the fields. Whatever. End of story. I almost nailed it exactly. So yeah, I think we both saw that game playing out the way that it did. There was a small part of me, or maybe some part of me, that thought that Notre Dame would actually score first in a football game, but we've got 4 games running of that now. If you make it 5, you could come back from 1 touchdown against Navy, but uh, I don't. And I get this is where that time of possession thing really plays into Notre Dame's favor, because if you do go down, it's not like, oh no, we're chasing a game where we're not going to have a lot of possessions. If you're looking at it from Notre Dame's perspective, I think it's going to be a normal football game. The big thing for Notre Dame in this one, and this is the second point that I wanted to get to, with what you said is getting off the field on third down and the defense just like controlling the flow of the game. I talked to Al Golden this week in our weekly availability, and I asked him, "What the heck is going on with these first drives? Why is everyone scoring on you?" And he talked a lot about the script. I thought it was a very good quote. You've probably read it when I posted that at blueandgold.com, Jack. He's kind of right. Like Notre Dame had a chance to get Georgia Tech off script a couple of times on that first drive when you were talking about all the horizontal stuff and not really they were Georgia Tech was on script basically. And if Notre Dame got off the field on third down, you would have said, "To heck with your script. Let's see you come back out here and try to do the same things that you were just doing." Well, Notre Dame didn't get off the field. Zach Pyron goes 9 for 9 for 81 yards in the first quarter, and Georgia Tech is leading 7-0. So Navy, you talked about how this is an unconventional Navy team offensively. The offensive coordinator, heck of a mind. They're probably gonna have one heck of a script too, I would imagine, Jack. So like I'm sitting here thinking, okay, you fooled me. I thought Notre Dame would score first last week. I wouldn't be shocked if Navy scores first this week because I think they're going to come out and kind of show Notre Dame their best stuff early. They have really good stuff. They're going to have good stuff all game long. But like I said, it's going to be about Notre Dame getting off the field on third down, give it to your offense. Because by the way, we'll get into this. Navy's defense, not great.
Yeah. No, I think you make a great point about disrupting the flow of the game. I think it's big, and Marcus Freeman mentioned this on Monday for Notre Dame to get Navy behind the chains because Navy's whole passing game, like first of all, Navy has a passing game. How about that? Like Navy has a really efficient passing game, like one of the most efficient passing games in the country, right behind Army. Although Navy throws it much more than Army, not as much as everyone else, but much more than Army. But it's all based on misdirection, a lot of window dressing, testing your eye discipline. It's based on rollouts. Blake Horvath is really good at that. And it's based on play action, and none of that is effective on third and long. So disrupting the flow of the game, disrupting Navy's rhythm, creating havoc plays, but in a different way. Like havoc plays are so hard to create against this Navy team because they thrive off havoc. If the defense isn't structured, like they're gonna thrive off that and hit the quick triple option, hit the big plays. So it's an interesting balance between needing to knock Navy off your rhythm and not needing to get out of your own. And it's a challenge unlike any Navy team has been in quite some time.
All right, Jack, I mentioned that you will be out there for that game. If you guys are going out there, you're not going to find Augie's locker room in what is it, East Rutherford, New Jersey? I think if you're going out there, Jersey. Yeah, you're probably staying somewhere in New York City, I would imagine. I don't know. We'll if you're coming to a game at Notre Dame Stadium, though, you're probably staying somewhere in South Bend or Mishawaka, and you can easily get to Augie's locker room there. Obviously, we know you love Notre Dame memorabilia, and one unique, one of a kind Notre Dame items you can only find at one place. That is Augie's locker room. Augie's locker room has moved to a new location as of last fall. Come see Augie's store located at 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend, right down the street from Notre Dame, not down the street from MetLife Stadium, like I said. It's Notre Dame football season, so when you come for a game, you have to make time for Augie's locker room. They have a wide selection of Notre Dame Stadium pieces, jerseys, helmets, autographs, and one-of-a-kind Rockne items. You can find exclusive Joe Montana signed items and famous sculptor Jerry McKenna's replicas of the bronze statues around the stadium. Augie gets new items all the time. If you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate it. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. You're seeing some of that stuff that I'm mentioning right now. If he doesn't have it in his store, he will find it for you. Visit Augie at 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend and see the vintage helmet display dating back to 1890. He's got some amazing items that you want to see. Visit augieslockerroom.com or call him at 574-277-6363. All right, Jack, we're talking a lot about this Navy game, and in the Hey Horka thread, which kind of drives this podcast and this video, a lot of Navy-centric questions. I think this is the one game on Notre Dame's schedule every year where Notre Dame fans really want to dive into the opponent itself and not just like, what is Notre Dame at this point in time? How are the Irish going to show up this week and what are they going to look like? A lot of people want to know what Navy is going to look like. So this first question is a little bit of both. Given that Navy's offense is so different than everything Notre Dame sees generally, but you're going to see it twice this season. Who steps up and has a big game for the Notre Dame defense? I think that is usually the first question. We're going to start with it because There's a lot of eye candy, like you were talking about. It takes a lot of discipline to play defensively well against this team. I've got a quick answer, and it's an easy one. Jack Kaiser has led Notre Dame in tackles against Navy 2 straight games. This is his 6th season at Notre Dame. So I guess Notre Dame didn't play. Would his first season have been the COVID season then? If this is, or would have been 2019 if this is his 6th
Yeah,
season? I don't. The math
Kaiser's
is
my
always
year
weird.
in 2019.
Okay, so they didn't play in 2020. This is the 5th time that he will have seen Navy, I guess, if I'm doing my math correctly. He's seen this team a lot. He's played well against this team. He is the leader of this linebacker group. Like as good and young and talented as these guys are, Jack Kaiser wears the C on his chest. He goes out there and is kind of like the captain of this, the middle of this defense. I think he's going to have another really good game. And then somebody else, I'm probably stealing this from you. I'll let you talk about him if I am. Xavier Watts has so incredibly improved his run defense. I think he's going to be running alleys. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a huge hit in this game. He's a smart football player himself, just like Jack Kaiser. I like Kaiser and Watts, 2 veteran dudes to go out there, and they've seen this before, and they know what to do against it.
Yeah, I agree on the Kaiser point. I think he's so often the forgotten man in this linebacker core. But like when you hear the young linebackers we all love talking about, talk about Kaiser, like they loop him in with like Coach Golden and like Al and Max and Jack. Like that's what Drake Bowen said a few times. Like they consider him a coach on the field, a coach off the field, but he's still a good player. And I think we needed that reminder against Georgia Tech. I think he had a good amount of tackles. Most of his tackles, I think, were stops in the run game. He's still a very good player. There's a reason he plays as much as he does. I think it was Singer who was in the comment section a few weeks ago, maybe last week or a couple weeks ago. I don't know. It was saying like maybe Kaiser should get fewer snaps. No, I think Kaiser's having the right amount of snaps right now. I think the safeties in general will be big, because when Navy likes to throw, they love their slot back Eli Heidenreich, and it's such an important balance if you're the Notre Dame safeties between lost my train of thought again. It's such an important balance if you're in the Notre Dame safeties between supporting in the running game against a triple option, because the safeties are huge against a triple option, and making sure that the slot backs and the receivers don't get behind you. So striking that balance is going to be huge for them in this game.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about the safeties. People are out there clamoring for Kennedy Urlacher to play in this game because he's so physical.
Who
I
has
don't.
said that?
I've seen it on message boards. I've seen it on social media. They're like, wait until Kennedy Urlacher starts running the alleys against Navy. I don't know about that, and I don't think that I've drawn up this question from Aerofan624. Somehow we were having a Hey Horka show without a question from Aerofan. He asked some good
That's
ones in
against
the
the rules,
thread.
really.
Shout out to Aerofan. He asked, like, do you play some of the younger guys just to give the older guys some rest, like in this game, so they can focus on Navy's offense when they are out there? And I was kind of pushing back on that and saying, no, I think this is a heavy Howard Cross, Riley Mills game. You will see some Gay Rubio and Donovan Heinisch mixed in. The guy asking this question, by the way, B Smitty 8, he gave a shout to Donovan Heinisch for being his guy that is going to step up. Not sure about that. I really think that Notre Dame leans into Cross, Mills, the guys that a whole bunch of safety played by Xavier Watts. But on the flip side of that, I think Notre Dame is confident enough in like Adon Schuler to just play most of the game as well. You will see some Rod Hurd, but basically what I'm trying to get at, Jack, is the guys that have brought you here are the ones that you're going to go out there with. No, if you're Notre Dame against Navy, just because this opponent is so unique, it's not like you're going to be riding with anyone else just to kind of be unique yourself in this game. I think Notre Dame can be Notre Dame and still have a good defensive day against Navy.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to lean on your vets even more than before. Like I think Kaiser probably can't come off the field as much in this game. That's the one big personnel adjustment I'd make. I'm interested to see how often they go with that 3 safety package, because like they were in a 4-4 last year against this team. I don't know if they're going to want to do that again, but I also don't think they're going to be in nickel and certainly not dime as much. So apologies to Jordan Clark. This is probably not a game where you're going to see him all that much, even though he's been one of the 3 best players on this defense so far this season. But yeah, you're going to rely on Carlson Mills to create some destruction up front. But again, you also got to maintain your gaps. Watts is going to be big. Schuler's going to be big. Hurd's going to rotate in there with them. I think that Schuler and Hurd played almost equally in that last game. Credit to you because you were the one who suggested playing Rod Hurd some more. And Rod Hurd is playing some really good football right now. And that's another reason I was so confused when you said people want Kennedy Urlacher to play more. Like, Kennedy Urlacher is going to be a great player, but like the safeties might be the strength of the defense right now.
Yeah, when I was at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, had a nice little, like a corner end zone view from the press box, and I was just kind of like smirking to myself because, like you said in last week's Hey Horka thread, I said play Rod Hurd more, and then I kept like looking up. You used my binoculars. I was like, that is number 2 instead of number 8 that I keep seeing. Rod Hurd played a lot in that football game, and hey, I guess I was onto something there. I like you would not be shocked if he plays a lot in this game, but in terms of who steps up, who has a big game, I'm looking at the 2 guys that I said. It's your veterans, man. It's your veterans who have done this before. It's Kaiser and Watts for me.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think while obviously you want the veterans to step up, it's worth mentioning that like you also need the young guys to play well. Like you can't stop playing Kingston and Osbury and Bowen in this game. Like you have to get them prepared for Navy. You also, and this goes back to your point about Navy probably going to score on one of their first few drives, is that like it's tough to adjust. And Marcus Freeman talked about this on Monday. It's tough to adjust to the speed in which Navy does things. Like last year was my first year really fully watching Navy. I wasn't at the game, but like that is my first year covering Notre Dame. So like, all right, let's see what Navy can do. Like the quickness with which they hit that triple option it's got to be hard to simulate in practice because they like you blink and they got the dive going 5 yards down the field. You blink and the quarterback has it and he's hitting the hole. Like it goes at you really quickly, and it might take some time for the Bryce Youngs and Kingston Viliamuasas and Jaden Osbury's of the world to adjust to that.
To that point, they are going to play, and they're going to play a lot, though. I really like this quote. This is just like 5 words from a quote from Al Golden talking about. So I put out a social media post linking to a story at blueandgold.com. All 3 of Notre Dame's really young linebackers. So in that trio, I'm talking about Kingston Viliamuasa, Drake Bowen, Jaden Osbury, freshmen and sophomores. They're all playing between 26 and 33 snaps per game this season. None of them, not even Bowen or Osbury, who were here last year, have played a single snap against Navy's option offense. So they're seeing this for the first time, like you said, Jack. But Al Golden, in this tweet that I'm showing you guys, said nobody cares that they're rookies. He also said some things like, nobody cares about your age. We don't care about our own age. If you're a good football player, you're going to play football in this game. But one point to what you were saying about the speed and just like it's not just the decisiveness. It's the speed at which Navy hits the hole on their option plays, but it's the decisiveness too. They know exactly where they're going. I know you're into Sports Info Solutions. We both use it for the on-paper sections that we write for the Blue and Gold Illustrated magazine. One stat that I can't get out of my head, and it actually went up this past week after Navy played Charlotte. I had to adjust it for the web from the magazine, Jack. Navy hits the designed gap on their designed run plays 87% of the time. It's the highest in college football. There are some other teams in the 80s. You see a lot of the option offenses up there, obviously. But just for context, I think Notre Dame's in the mid-60s. So that's a 20% gap of like Jeremiah Love saying, oh, I'm supposed to go there, but now I'm going to go this way because I'm Jeremiah Love, and that's what I do. Navy is, hey, we do this fake and that fake, and then we go to the B gap right there, and that's what we do. That's who we are, and we're going to do it. So on the one hand, you think that would be easy to stop because it's like, okay, I think they're going there. But it's all the stuff that happens before that, Jack, that you don't know that that's where the play is supposed to end up going, and that's what can get you into some trouble because at some point you're staring at some fullback's number who just ran for 25 yards, chunk play.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that is like you said, like they play fast and they know what decisions they're going to make. Like on this offense, like you recognize a lot of the names. Like Dabo Fofana has been there for a few years. Eli Heidenreich's been there for a few years. Alec Teska, one of those two. has been there for a few years. Blake Horvath, it's his third year there. He played some last year. This is his first year as a full-time starter. Obviously, the offensive coordinator is new, but these guys have all played together for a while, and I feel like in an option offense, like it's like you're talking about a basketball team. Like in an option offense, guys who have played together for a while, like that matters. And I think that's an underrated reason Navy's having the success that they are.
All right, let's stick with the Notre Dame defense, but kind of shifted away to other teams, and this is all hypothetical because there's not really a okay, here's the question. What teams ahead of Notre Dame in the rankings could make the Irish defense look average? Because we're talking about elite Notre Dame defense once again, right, Jack? Even with all these injuries, it's one of the best defenses in the country. How would an opposing offense, and what offenses are we talking about? I'm going to give you the floor first here. Would you get into a game and you'd say, oh man, yeah, that team could pose some problems for Al Golden's unit? This is from Irish NIN 88.
It's so tough because like you want to talk about someone who's a great run game, right? But Notre Dame did awesome against a really good run game in Georgia Tech. It's like Al Golden does so well. This was as apparent in the USC game last year as it's ever been. Al Golden is so good at taking away what the opponent does best. And that's why I think we've seen this Notre Dame run game struggle more often against teams we think are not good at running the ball. Obviously, NIU is the exception. But since then, the teams that have run the ball in the Irish are not the teams that we think are good at running the ball. And it's because Golden is just so good at taking away what the opponent does best. So I'm trying to think of like gimmicky teams that could confuse Notre Dame's linebackers. Obviously, I mean, our Army and Navy is like, we don't know what they're going to look like against them. Like those are honestly the two of the teams that come to mind as teams who could. I don't know. There's not a super team, and certainly not a super offense given the state of quarterback play in college football right now. And I haven't watched enough of Miami because Miami probably has the quarter. I don't know about best quarterback, but certainly quarterback who's playing the best right now. And I haven't watched enough of them to definitively say they could score on Notre Dame. I really don't know. What would you say for this?
Yeah, I think that's the compliment to Notre Dame is you don't know. I mean, I've watched a lot of these teams that are ranked ahead of Notre Dame, and part of me, like even Oregon's the number one team in the country. I've watched a lot of them this year, and I'm sitting there thinking, I think Notre Dame could slow down Dylan Gabriel and these guys a little bit, but that is the one combination that I think could get Notre Dame in a little bit of trouble is supreme athletes, which Oregon has, and good coaching. So it's like, why do you think the Ohio State and Oregon game came down to what it did? It was a fantastic football game. Those are two of the best teams in the country because they have awesome athletes and they have really good coaching. They have schemes, they have direction in those offenses. So I think Texas is on that list, even with what we saw against Georgia. Like, I think most games Texas is going to show up and have a really good offensive game. Georgia is on that list because of the supreme athletes and the good coaching. But you mentioned one in Miami. I think the quarterback and the wide receivers is a huge part in this. And Notre Dame's schedule hasn't been great. But who's the one team that has scored 3 touchdowns in a game against, and before this past week, multiple? It was like nobody had scored outside of this one team even 2 touchdowns. Georgia Tech gets its second touchdown in garbage time. So really, I put them in the list of teams that have only scored once against Notre Dame. Louisville scored 3 times against Notre Dame, and it was all through the air. Christian Gray wasn't playing. Benjamin Morrison comes out for a little bit of that game. But I think with like 2 young cornerbacks, if you have a team that wants to throw, and Miami does that, I'm looking at it right now, number 1 in the country in yards per game, attempts per game. I don't know if there we go. 38 attempts per game. So they're top 20 in like that. That's a lot of pass attempts. And Tyler Shuck of Louisville, a lot of pass attempts. Some of them were good. Some of them were hurtful to Notre Dame. He threw for 3 touchdowns in that game because he had the wide receivers to do it. I look at like a team like Miami that wants to throw it, can throw it, wants to go best on best because we know that Notre Dame's pass defense is so elite. It's top 5 in pass efficiency defense once again. And then Miami has a decent enough running game to go along with it too. I believe they're top 40 in rushing yards per game. So it's is it not the best offense in college football in terms of yards per game right now? It is
I mean, hell, it might be Army and Navy
577.
at this point.
No, it's Miami, 577 yards
Okay.
per game. That's a lot. So it's an interesting question. It's totally hypothetical, but I think Miami could do some damage. And guess what? Weren't we supposed to get that game this year, Jack? Or was that
We
next
were.
year? That
Yeah,
was this year. That's the Army replaced it.
we were supposed to get it. I forget. I think it was on Miami side that it got
Yeah.
pulled.
Yep.
Uh,
And Army replaced it.
it is worth noting that Miami has also given up a lot of points. Like they've played in a lot of close games, which can influence their level of or their total offense numbers. So I think like again total stats we have to kind of take with a grain of salt in all scenarios. And like a team like Texas before like isn't going to have as many yards of total offense because they're winning by 30 as opposed to Miami who's winning by 3 when they're scoring a lot. So I don't know. I think I mean, can we turn this into a college football playoff discussion like everyone and their mother has done this week?
I'm surprised that we haven't done it already. Go ahead.
I'm surprised as well. I think Notre Dame's going to make the playoff if they win out. And I've kicked around some scenarios in my head which team I like best as a matchup for Notre Dame, like from Notre Dame's perspective. Penn State might be up there just because I don't know if I buy their offense.
Yeah.
It's just like
those are the teams that I'm looking at in the hypothetical CFP. It's like who do I not want Notre Dame to get into a scoring match with? Let me choose those teams. And that's why I mentioned the teams that I did that would possibly scare me. Like that's why Texas still scares me. Athletes like crazy, head coach and Steve Sarkisian that's going to coach them up. And I wouldn't be surprised if Texas could score 30 plus points. It's basically who do I think could score 30 or more on Notre Dame? I don't want to play that team because I don't know if Notre Dame is going to score 30 or more. So Texas,
on the other hand, it's worth making the case that like maybe you'd rather play the team with the stronger offense because you trust Notre Dame's defense to shut it down. Like I think you said in your
too. That's
you said in your hey well Texas needs to worry about playing or beating a real team, but you said in your hey Horka answer that like any of these offenses we talk about, we could also see Notre Dame giving up like 17 to 24 points, like
100% or less or fewer than that too.
Yeah. If Notre Dame is to make a run, and again, if they win out, they're in. If they don't, they're not. I think it's pretty simple. Seeding depends on a variety of factors like style points, like Texas A&M's results the rest of the season, like the teams around them. But if they win out, they're in. If they don't, they're not. I think it's pretty simple. And I would personally rather play a team with a great offense and a weak defense because
who is that though? I don't know if all the teams like. Defense seems to be pretty good in college football this year.
Yeah, that's true. And it's also worth mentioning that like there isn't really a team out there that I can really say would blow out Notre Dame. Like Oregon and Ohio State are probably the best two right now. But neither are perfect, certainly.
I trust Notre Dame to do the same thing it did to Ohio State last year. Slow down the offense and hope to get enough on offense yourself to win. And it almost did that, but it didn't, and it almost did that 2 years running. Like the CJ Stroud Ohio State team was incredible offensively and Notre Dame was in that game too. So yeah, I think Notre Dame could compete. It's just like, I think the Notre Dame defense could do exactly what Georgia did to Texas on a really good day last week, but I don't trust the Notre Dame offense to go up 23-0 at half against a team like Texas, who has a good defense.
It's not how they win. Yeah, it's not how they win. Different teams.
Yeah, but they also didn't beat Ohio State, and the defense played so phenomenally well last year.
That's true.
That's why like these teams at the top scare me because it's like your defense can play so well, but they also have good defenses. Oregon, your brother goes to Oregon. Is the defense bad? Like, would you take Notre Dame's chances against Oregon because Oregon has a bad defense?
I don't know if I'd say their defense is bad. They've played a lot. Okay. I think the 3-point win over Boise State has aged well. I even saw one of ESPN's playoff projections had Boise State as the 4 seed. Like as in they think Boise State's going to be better than whoever wins the Big 12. And while unlikely, it's not. Is that impossible? I don't think the committee would see it that way, but like I could see us looking back on the season as Boise State's a better team than whoever wins the Big 12, just because Ashton Shenty is that insane. And they have a pretty good team around him. Like,
Boise State's probably going to go 11-1 and get into the Mountain West Championship game at 11-1.
and
Right?
they have
I'm
a
looking at the
they have
schedule.
a last second field goal loss to Oregon on their resume.
Yeah, when that happened, I was like, "Oh, Oregon's bad," but maybe I just
No.
wasn't giving enough credit to Boise State.
Well, I think like we saying, oh, so and so is bad based on a week 1 or week 2 game is just such a fool's errand. Exhibit A, Notre Dame. Like, Mike said something on the show last night that towards the beginning when he and Tim were talking about the playoff, like the Notre Dame team that is like Notre Dame's team right now would kill NIU, and like while true, the Notre Dame team that showed up against Texas A&M would have beaten the snot out of NIU.
Yeah.
So I think the lesson from this season, because you have teams with more new pieces than ever before, which I think has gone over a lot of people's heads, and you have more parity than ever before because of NIL and the transfer portal, then I think more week 1 and 2 results should be not thrown out, but like taken with a grain of salt than before.
Unless you lose to Northern Illinois and your Notre Dame.
Correct.
Like you still have to, like, yeah, if it's a narrow win over a team that you didn't think was very good,
yeah,
maybe you shouldn't be a prisoner of the moment. I see exactly what you're saying, and I agree with that. All right, let's move on to the offensive side of the ball, Jack, and this is from KCND MIS 97. Have you seen enough from the Notre Dame offense to suggest it can dominate the Service Academy defenses? The answer is nuanced because, Jack, Service Academy defenses, to me, are entirely different. I think Army's has a better defense, so we'll talk about that game when we get there. But, Jack, just doing the numbers, looking at the numbers, looking at Navy's defense, looking at the time of possession stat that we mentioned earlier tonight, if it's just going to be this team has the ball for 30 minutes and that team has the ball for 30 minutes game, which, by the way, Navy doesn't even possess the ball for 30 minutes. I think it's like 29 and change or whatever. So that's why you see them at 85. That's below average in college football. I'm going into this game thinking Notre Dame's offense can do exactly what it did against Stanford and Georgia Tech. And like, I get it. And one of those games was 49 points. The other was 31. I think Georgia Tech shows a little bit more like toughness and ability to play than Stanford does. But I think the running game is going to be there. I think the dink and dunk short passing game is going to be there. Notre Dame has superior athletes. Notre Dame is finding a groove offensively. So to answer the question, just speaking about the Navy game, yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of the same stuff that we've seen from Notre Dame the last couple of weeks against Navy.
Yeah, I think it's just all about consistency. We've seen him do it. Riley Leonard went 12 for 12 in one stretch last week with 3 straight touchdown drives, I believe, on that 12 for 12 stretch after the interception. So we've seen him do it. We just need to see him do it for 60 minutes. And that doesn't mean like scoring every single possession, but it means Riley needs to take what the defense gives him. I still laugh when I see the quote he gave after the game about the pick. It's like, well, you know, that was open every time in practice, but not against cover 3. And I'm like, Riley, everyone plays cover 3 against you. That's all they do. So you need to expect that, and you need to expect the short throws to be there if you're Riley Leonard. But also, it wasn't just the cover 3 beaters that Riley threw. They finally played man against Jaden Greathouse. He made that back shoulder fade catch. They were hammering the quick slant game, which is not all that effective against cover 3. They also did well getting him some easy rollout throws in that game. They set, so there was a screen pass later in that game that they set up to Aeneas Williams. And you know, when you're playing college football 25, when you set up a screen and the running back just kind of gets like stopped up behind a conglomeration of blockers and defenders. That happened to Notre Dame. But if Williams got through that scrum and was able to put himself in position to catch a pass, this was the play where like Leonard went flying. You remember this in like the third quarter. If Williams was able to get free, like they had the perfect plan for that, because Navy was running a blitz on that side. So we've seen the plays be there. Leonard just got to take them, and they need to not stop shooting themselves in the foot, like with Knapp's holding penalties, with drops, with Leonard throwing the interception. Like, They just need to be consistent. And if they do, they have every tool they need to dominate Navy.
Jack, did you just talk about a screen that, if it had worked properly, would have been to the betterment of Notre Dame football? It's too soon for that, man. It's way too soon for that. But I
Yeah.
totally agree. Great point on the quick slant game, because I had the chore of looking at the Notre Dame offense this week. Dude, if that the soft coverage from the nickel was puzzling to me. But like, if any other team does that against Notre Dame and Notre Dame exploits it that same way, I think you're going to see like really good dividends for Notre Dame in the passing game that way, because you found Bo Collins multiple times. You found Mitchell Evans in that situation. You threw an awesome screen to Mitchell Evans in this game that got a first down.
Another very well set. They've been doing a good job of setting up those screens recently.
Yeah, and Jeremiah Love gets involved on a couple of passes. I'm not talking about the fake punt. I'm talking about the other two that were very effective. I mean, dude, remember that little dump off that they kept doing to Jaden Greathouse, and even Jeremiah Love, running backs in the early in the year, Jack, where we're just like, oh my gosh, is this all they have offensively? Just right over the middle of the field. When you have other things, when you have that screen game going and the slant game and whatnot, and then you have that, and Jeremiah Love takes it, spins, and goes for 25 yards, like, now you're talking about an offense that has some nuance to it and some things that it can do. So, yeah, I think I've seen plenty from Denbrock and Leonard, and just terms of growth and improvement, to say that they're going to be really good against the Navy defense that, as where are we looking here? I saw somebody just talking about how, Brian and Wise, Army doesn't give up big plays, ball control, offense and defense. Navy, not so much with the ball control and the defense thing. So, like, matchup wise, as good as Navy has been, I like the matchup for Notre Dame, especially when we're talking just offense. Like, don't shoot yourself in the foot, convert on third down, put yourself in manageable third down conversions. Because, Jack, how different has this offense been when Notre Dame gets to 3rd and 2 and it's passing? It's passing multiple times. You saw it against Stanford. You saw it again against Georgia Tech, where it's like, we don't have to do the quarterback power thing. We're confident enough in ourselves to throw for this first down. It's happened multiple times. I think if you get into 3rd and manageables against Navy, you're going to see more of that against the midshipmen.
Yeah, I think the blanket lesson here is, like, don't get bored with taking the easy play. It's something so many quarterbacks have to learn, and it's something Riley needs to do more consistently. It's like, don't get bored with taking the easy play. If you do that, teams will be forced to play closer to the line of scrimmage, and then the shots will come. Like, if I'm a defense playing against Notre Dame, I'm going soft zone all the way, because I want to, A, prevent Riley Leonard from breaking the game with his legs, and B, try to goad him into taking one of those shots that's not there. Like, I'm playing that cover 3, cover 2, cover 4, especially if you're a team like Navy, who probably doesn't have the defensive backs to match up with Notre Dame's wide receivers, who, again, are better than their numbers would indicate this season. Then play zone, make them take the easy plays and march down the field, stop the run, and don't let Leonard run wild. But if you consistently take those easy plays and make them play more aggressive coverage, then the big plays will be there. So just start small and go bigger in this game.
I like that. I like that plan. I think we're in total agreement there. All right, Jack, sticking with the offensive side of the ball. So Nighthawk and defend 6'9". If you're watching this, I kind of chuckled when I saw this, but I will preface it with, all right, here's the question. Do you think Emil Wagner is offensive MVP so far? It's an out there question. However, it reminds me of when I was on my pregame WSBT radio show with Darren Pritchett about a month ago. I believe Notre Dame had only played 3 games to this point, so we're talking A&M, Northern Illinois, Purdue, and Darren posed the question, who are your top 5 Notre Dame players so far through three games? Who do you think has played the best? And there were some obvious choices. I think I put Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price both in there. Xavier Watts was already in there to that point. Not sure who I went with the 4th. It wasn't Riley Leonard yet, obviously, based on what happened against NIU. But when I got to number 5, Jack, I said, yeah, I kind of like the way Emil Wagner has played. If you asked me to do that same exercise right now, I don't know if I would have him in the top 5. Wouldn't be shocked if I had him in my top 10, though. Point being, he's had a really good season. An offensive line where we're talking about this guy for not doing that or this guy for getting hurt and yada, yada, yada. Emil Wagner deserves his flowers. If you know, you know. However, offensive MVP, Jack, it's one of the guys I mentioned. It's Jeremiah Love. I don't think it's close. This guy's ridiculous. If you're looking at the YouTube right now, I will read the tiny little text. Jeremiah Love has a broken or missed tackle on 42.1% of his rushing attempts per Sports Info Solutions. That's the number one rate in the country. Yes, it is ahead of Ashton Jeanty of Boise State, who has a very close number of 41.3%. Jeanty has 50 more carries than Love. If Love went on this way and had 30, 40, 50 more carries, I think people would be talking about him as one of the best running backs in the country. Jack, you and I get to watch him every single game. So I think we both agree that he is one of the best running backs in the country, despite volume, in spite of volume, whatever you want to say. He's Notre Dame's offensive MVP to me, and it's not close. And this is crazy if you agree with me, because what do you say about running backs? I don't know your exact slogan, but I'll let you take it away from here.
I personally, I believe this more strongly in the NFL than I do with college, but
Okay.
I think the running back position in general gets a little overblown. I think what we often credit to running backs is the result of the offensive line. I do think that Love is the offensive MVP of this team, because I think boiling down his contributions to just running is selling it a little short. He's one of their best pass catchers right now. He is one of their best blockers right now. He's been fantastic in the quarterback counter game, and I think that's not lost on Notre Dame right now. He just does so much for their offense. And I know this is going to become a discussion about Jeremiah Love not getting the ball enough, a point which I believe is overblown. I think he probably should get a few more touches, but if you want to treat him like an Ashton Jeanty type of player where you're giving the ball 25 times in a close game, that's a mistake, because the identity and the real strength of this offense is the diversity in the ball carriers right now. You have the threat of Love, you have the threat of Leonard. That is what makes this offense really good. In my opinion, they shouldn't lose that and suddenly decide to make Love a traditional bell cow.
You know what's crazy in the stat that I just flashed, and I'll flash it again? The guy who ranks number 13 in this stat, which is basically like a elusiveness stat, is Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
Among all ball carriers in the country, he's just outside the top 10. There's actually, I believe, 4 quarterbacks ahead of him. Couldn't name them. I should have written them down, but that's besides the point. He is one of the most elusive players.
Is Horka one of them?
No, I don't think Horvath was one of them. A bunch of guys at like smaller schools who are just dominating weaker opponents, I believe.
Yeah.
Anyway, I agree with you. So Mark with glasses, this sounds a little snarky. Leonard by default. I could see the argument for that as well, and it more positively feeds into what you were saying, Jack, in that, yeah, he's a huge part of this offense. Probably the number one catalyst for it, considering he gets the ball every single play, and he's either going to do something good or bad with his arm. And lately, it's been more good, I would say, than bad. And the running is still right there. I mean, him and Love are in lockstep. I can quickly pull up the numbers. I think you've been doing the same thing that I've been doing this season, Jack, and just like following the step for step that Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love have been in. Jeremiah Love has now surpassed Riley Leonard in both attempts and rushing yards, but it's still so close. They're basically the same runner playing 2 different positions. It's incredible to me. Jeremiah Love, 77 carries, 462 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's one of 11 players in the country, just 11 players total, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, whoever, who have scored in every single game this season. Riley Leonard, meanwhile, 75 carries, 456 yards, so just 6 behind Love, and 10 touchdowns. Crazy that Leonard is not one of those 11 players, Jack, that has scored in every single game, because you feel like he has. The Texas A&M game, I believe, is the only game that he
Correct.
did not enter the end zone himself. So
Correct.
I totally agree with you. I think shout out to Thomas Na at blueandgold.com, loose emoji message board. Later on down the line, but when we already had this show set up, he said, does Notre Dame have an offensive identity yet? And Jack, you just used that same word, identity. It is Leonard and Love. Let them go. Let them run. They're both very good at it. Sprinkle in Jadarian Price. He's been effective as well. 49 carries, 329 yards, 3 touchdowns. Leads the team with 6 yards 6.7 yards per carry, by the way. Jadarian Price does. And then the quick game and the passing game that we just talked about. If you can just do that and then hit the occasional slot fade to Jaden Greathouse like you did against Georgia Tech, or have a big screen go for 50 yards, which was close to happening against Georgia Tech, that's your offensive identity, man. And it works, and it can work against a lot of teams when you have a defense as good as the one that Notre Dame has backing it up.
Yeah, and as long as they execute the passing game consistently, which they haven't done yet, but again, we've seen it. We've seen more and more flashes as of late, and I think it's going to continue to improve from here. Mark with glasses like made that Leonard's the MVP of this overly quarterback focused offense sarcastically, but like it, I will never understand the aversion Notre Dame fans have to Riley Leonard as a runner, given
Look at the
that
numbers.
given that it's one of the greatest luxuries to have in the country. Like, obviously the passing game hasn't been there. We're talking about Riley, the runner right now, but like to go away from that because you want to force Love and Price more touches, like it's just nonsensical. Like Leonard is the reason Notre Dame has one of the best red zone offenses in college football right now.
I was about to make that same point. Who else in the country besides maybe Boise State with Ashton Jean? I don't know his red zone numbers actually, because I've seen him score on a lot of long touchdowns.
I'll pull up the team numbers.
I'm guessing he scores on a lot of red zone looks as well.
Yeah, Boise State doesn't get to the red zone because no one tackles Gente in the red
zone. Exactly. That's what I've seen. I mean, but I'm just watching the highlights mainly in a couple late games after we get home and have to work on magazine duties. It seems like Boise State is always on for that occasion. However, Jack, not a lot of teams have an automatic weapon in the red zone. You saw it twice against Georgia Tech, 2 more Leonard scores. And in the second one from like 12 yards out was so awesome because you fake it to Love. There's a defender or two who key in on him and say, okay, I've got to go with this running back. He's really good too. Leonard pulls. It's an RPO. It's actually Mitchell Evans gave us some good insight the other night. It's the same play that Eli Raridan scored on against Stanford, just going the opposite direction. Evans looks like he's blocking, but then he slips out to the flat. 2 defenders go with him. As soon as Riley Leonard sees that, he's like, I don't need to throw it to Evans. I can just run literally straight 12 yards into the end zone, touchdown Notre Dame. Like you said, dude, that red zone luxury is insane.
Yeah. And Mark with glasses, I apologize if I misinterpreted your point. He's saying that he didn't mean that negatively. And like, I honestly considered, thank you, Mark with glasses. You're a very loyal listener. I honestly considered like making the case for Leonard as the offensive MVP so far. You can't do that because of his shortcomings as a passer, especially early in the season. But if you're just talking the last 4 weeks, you have a better case because the red zone efficiency is this offense's greatest strength, and Leonard is the driver behind that. So Boise State's number 12 in red zone efficiency right now, and this is just touchdown efficiencies. Number 1 is Navy, who up until last week was 100% touchdowns. Wow. Number 2 is Ohio State, Nevada, Army, Indiana, Notre Dame, Georgia Southern,
Notre Dame,
a school that will go unmentioned, Texas, Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, and Boise State. The school unmentioned starts with a K.
Really? I thought they were bad this year.
Well, they are, but apparently they're good at that.
They're good in the red zone. They just don't get there a whole lot. Okay, yeah. I mean, I can't remember, Jack. This is terrible of me, but was this an issue? Was this an issue last year for Notre Dame? I mean, could you pull that up quickly? Just like toggle the year. I can't remember if we were talking about Notre Dame struggling in the red zone with Jared Parker and Sam Hartman and all those guys.
It was not as overtly a strength as it is this year. Last year, Notre Dame was 16th in the country with 72% touchdowns. Okay. This year, they are 6th in the country with 81% touchdowns. So it wasn't a weakness last year, but it improved.
I just remember recently that it was an issue. Maybe it was a Drew Pine issue in 2022. That could definitely be.
They were 19th in the country, so they've been good in the red zone consistently.
Okay. Yeah, but it's Leonard that takes it over the top.
Yes.
Right? Like now you're elite. Right. You're not just good. You're elite now. So
yes, correct. They just need to get to the red zone more.
And I've said this, like, I've worn this out, but I can't stop thinking about it. We knew this was going to happen, Jack, when we watched 21 games of Duke film. Mike Elko and Kevin Johns, the offensive coordinator, I believe.
You're right.
Was that 2 years that he had him, or Yeah,
Yeah,
it
2
might
years.
have been Cutcliffe was only there for, Leonard's freshman year, right? And he didn't play much in his freshman year, so yeah. Kevin Johns, yeah, he knew, run this guy in the red zone, it works, you will score touchdowns, so
Yep.
alright. We're gonna wrap this up with a little fun one. Less X's and O's and, football talk, but Notre Dame Navy, dude, this is like a huge rivalry, decades long. They play every single year. I mentioned earlier in the show, not in that COVID year. COVID messed everything up for everybody. What are your thoughts on Notre Dame versus Navy as an outsider, Jack? Because I think we both came into this obviously at different times.
Yeah.
You last year and me a couple of years ago. Not really know it. Like I will admit first that I didn't really know that Notre Dame Navy was a thing like every single year. And then once I realized why, that it goes back to World War II, and you had the naval base set up, and basically Notre Dame was going on tough times. Everybody was during that time, and basically Notre Dame kind of got saved by Navy, and Notre Dame all these years later is paying Navy back by playing them in a college football game for decades on end. I think that's awesome. I think that's like
Yeah.
the tradition aspect of college football that you could tell somebody that at the bar this weekend who doesn't know. Chances are, if you watch the show, you do know. But like, imagine going out to some random place and you get the guy that walks in. Why the heck is Notre Dame playing Navy? And you tell them that. I don't think there's anyone that's going to be like, oh, that sucks. It's a pretty cool thing, and I like it.
Yeah, I recently learned the origin story. So the story of how I learned this is actually kind of funny because it was on the message board. This was a few weeks ago when we were starting to realize, oh, Army and Navy. Well, I
Yeah.
someone said like they were both 5-0 for the first time since 1945, and I'm like, wow, 1945, banner year for the military right there, all around. And someone responded to that snarky, smart ass comment with with the story, and I should learn so I can tell my buddies in New York. When I go there this weekend, I should learn, like, memorize the full story so I can tell people. But no, I think it's great. I think it is a great tradition. You brought up the great point in the Hey Horka thread that Navy is not the reason Notre Dame's schedule stinks. The ACC is the reason Notre Dame's schedule stinks. Like, it's it's a bad year for the ACC. It's Miami and it's Clemson, and then Pitt. But we'll see. Has Pitt played anyone yet?
I don't think Pitt has played anyone. I think
Yeah, I don't
that's
think
a,
Pitt's
a
played anyone
fool's
either.
gold type team, and like,
Yeah.
like Louisville was supposed to be this good win, right? And it's just not at this point. Do they have two losses or three, Jack? Louisville.
I want to say 2. I
They
know
just
they
lost
lost
to
to SMU.
Miami.
They lost. So yeah, Pitt has not played anyone. They lost to SMU, who's undefeated in conference play, I think. So we'll monitor. We'll monitor Patrick Engel's. What's its names?
Yeah, the
Mustangs.
Stangs, the
Yep.
Mustangs. Yeah,
Yeah.
ACC legends.
The
SMU.
ACC is killing Notre Dame's strength of schedule, like Mark with glasses, with glasses said, and
I totally agree with that.
and USC to a lesser extent, but that's a less chronic problem.
Here's the thing. Navy is also killing Notre Dame's strength of schedule, because if you look at Navy's strength of schedule, I think they have like the 127th. Army's is like 132nd, or vice versa. They're both really bad, and it's bringing Notre Dame's strength of schedule down. But look, Alabama plays Mercer or whoever, like that's that game for the SEC programs that bring the strength of schedule
Yeah.
down. Navy is going to be a given. And guess what? This year, the strength of schedule aside, even if it is pulling Notre Dame's SOS down, it would be a quality win. Like, you have to factor that in too. But even in the years that it's not, you have to figure that you need a game like that. Like, Notre Dame needed to open last year with a 42-3 win against Navy, because everyone else that weekend, aside from a handful of teams that are actually playing somebody, they're beating the crap out of a team just like Navy.
Yeah.
It's the ACC games. I totally agree with this, and I put it on the message board, like you said. Dude, like, when you're playing Virginia and a 1-6 Florida State, and Louisville is supposed to be your big ACC game, and they're 4-3 right now.
Yeah.
My goodness, that's not good. And I'm not. This isn't like to get on Jack Swarbrick or anything for striking that deal 10 years ago or whatever it was, because I think it's a pretty good one. But shame on the ACC for being so bad. Like Florida State is supposed to be good every single year. It's not. That's hurting Notre Dame. And quite frankly, USC is supposed to be good every single year. You can make this a Big Ten thing or a Pac-12 thing, whatever you want to do, and they're not. So yeah, don't get mad at Navy. Navy's on the schedule every year. It's a given. But this year, you can be mad at Navy at 4 p.m. Eastern on Saturday if somehow they have upset the Irish Witch, Jack. As much as we've talked about liking the matchup, definite possibility. This Navy team is for real and confident. And watching Brian Newberry's press conference back, that's a confident coach. It's crazy that the 180 has been made. Like last year, 42-3 was completely expected. This year, I mean, I saw some predictions in the chat, like 35-28, some close predictions. And I would not be shocked if Notre Dame wins this game by one score. It's not what I'm predicting. Go to blueandgold.com on Friday to see what I'm actually predicting. But would I be shocked if it's a one-score game? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I want to say it had like 42-24 or something. So like maybe it's close. Maybe it's close through 2.5 quarters or something like that. But no, Notre Dame could absolutely lose this game. It's tough to know who Navy is at this point because they haven't they played Memphis, who was the preseason American Athletic Conference favorite, and that's not nothing. But they haven't played a Power 4 school. And if you're Navy, this is your chance. Boise State is
that's how they're looking at it. Yeah,
Boise State is the prohibitive favorite to make the college football playoff as the Group of 5 team right now, assuming they win the Mountain West, and maybe UNLV has something to say about that. Who knows? But if you're Navy and you have that win over or Army for that matter, because whoever the winner of that matchup is inevitably the American Athletic Conference Championship is a possible candidate for that. But if you have a win over Notre Dame on your resume, the committee's going to want to put a Group of 5 team in who's proven they can beat the top of the competition, which is why Boise State is a prohibitive favorite right now because they came within a field goal of Oregon. So if you're Navy, you're thinking this is our chance for immortality, and it starts in this Notre Dame game, and this is going to be a really motivated Navy team for that reason.
Yeah, this is Navy's chance to get the win that really catapulted Cincinnati to the 2021 college football playoff. I know it's a completely different format, but Cincinnati went into that game thinking, yeah, we like our chances against everybody else, but if we have this Notre Dame game, it's what we need to get into the CFP. Navy is thinking the exact same thing. Mark Glasses says, tough to know which Notre Dame team shows up. Here's a stat for you. After last week, Georgia Tech, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, since the start of 2022, and this is very opponent-driven, obviously, but Notre Dame is 6-0 in neutral site venues in the Marcus Freeman era since the beginning of 2022, which you have to say the beginning of 2022 because Marcus Freeman lost to Oklahoma State at the end of 2021 in the Fiesta Bowl. So when you're saying that neutral site venue stat, if you start it from the beginning of 2022, Notre Dame's 6-0, and again they're a big favorite. Somebody asked, "What's the line?" I believe it's around 2 touchdowns right now. So Notre Dame has been in this spot under Marcus Freeman a lot as a double-digit favorite at a neutral site venue. So if you're wondering what team shows up, the Irish tend to get up for these things. I don't know what Marcus Freeman says on the plane or in the hotel room the night before, but they tend to play pretty well. I expect Notre Dame to play pretty well in this one.
I do too. I think good Notre Dame shows up. It's worth noting that truly bad Notre Dame hasn't shown up since NIU. They've won the rest of their games semi-comfortably. Louisville was not too comfortably, but it was still a 2-score game in the fourth quarter. So truly bad Notre Dame hasn't showed up since NIU. Mid Notre Dame probably showed up against Louisville and in Miami, Ohio. I would say good Notre Dame certainly showed up against Purdue, Stanford, and I would say good Notre Dame showed up against Georgia Tech. They were certainly good the entire game on defense, and they were good for spurts on offense.
If you're getting to the point of nitpicking a 18-point victory on the road, technically neutral
over
site,
over a 4-3 team,
over a decent football team, 5-3, I believe, Jack. I think they have 5 wins.
I want to say I thought 4.
No, I think they have 5 because they played in week 0, so they have that extra.
Oh yeah, you're
game
probably
at this
right.
point. So it's
Yeah, you're totally
semantics
right.
of
They're a 5-3 team. Yeah.
yeah, it's a 5-2 team going in, and Notre Dame, aside from one quarter, was clearly the better football team all afternoon. So to your
Yep.
point, yeah, I think good Notre Dame shows up eventually. Again, I don't know if they're going to strike first for the first time since Purdue, but that would be awesome for you guys if they did, because it's a feeling that you Notre Dame fans have not had in a while. But either way, Jack, I think it's going to be a fun football game. Another Notre Dame type weekend where they get to go on the road and go to one of these neutral site venues, which is supremely fighting Irish as well. Not a lot of teams across the country get to do that. So if you guys are there, say hi to Jack. Jack will also be in the New York City area this weekend, making the trip up there. But yeah, no matter what, come back here on Wednesday night for another edition of Hey Horka. Keep it here on the YouTube channel, Blue and Gold's YouTube channel, for all things Notre Dame Navy leading up to that, and then post game as well going into the bye week. So appreciate you guys for watching live, and we will definitely see you guys next time.